Hey everybody, it's Harry from Daddy BBQ, the YouTube channel that teaches you how to master barbecue so you can spread barbecue love. In today's episode, I am doing a brisket butter aging videos. You've seen many of my steak aging videos on my channel where I age steaks using umami bags, butter aging, dry aging, cryovac aging. So in this episode, we're going to age this brisket in some butter. This is a reaction to one of my viewer requests who asked me to show him how a brisket aged in butter would taste compared to a unaged and unbuttered brisket. So in this episode, we're going to cook it up and I'm going to share the results with you. I have a 12-pound packer brisket here. I'm going to do a light trim on it and smother it in butter. Very important to throw away the purge and never wash your brisket in the sink. Towel dry. I'm just gonna do a light trim on it to get rid of some of the surface fat, so the butter will be able to touch the surface of the meat instead of touching fat. I put my hand underneath to bow it a little bit so I can trim some of this silver skin and this fat off. Don't have to do too much because this will be sitting in the refrigerator. Just as a kind of explanation of how aging works is aging works in this case primarily by the action of enzymes. So within this meat itself, there's a couple of enzymes that are useful for aging. One is called calpain. What calpain does is calpain breaks down the muscle fibers to make the meat more tender. I'm not going to get any type of drying or what we call desiccation on this kind of aging because I'm not dry aging it. So if you dry age, you not only get the enzymatic action, you also will get the reaction from the desiccation or the drying out of the meat. If you dry age also, there's another possibility you can get what we call kind of fungi and growth of mold. Kind of like when you go to an Italian deli, you see the salumi, there's kind of a white fuzz on the salumi. That's the kind of a mold. It's called Penicillium genovese. I have a video out that speaks to some of the different kind of mechanisms for aging, but on this particular video, I'm just doing butter aging. So butter aging relies primarily on just the enzymes aging within the beef itself. I mentioned earlier that there's an enzyme called calpain, which causes the meat to age. There is also another enzyme in the beef here that will cause the opposite effect, which is to stop it from aging. The one is called calpastane. So between the reactions of calpain and calpastane, you can age beef quite successfully in America, especially since this one is a prime Angus brisket. You have to age meat that has a lot of fat in it, and meats that are select grade or below, it's going to be really hard to get a good result if you try to age it because there's not enough fat in it. That's why cattle from South America, which are of the Brahman or Zebu kind of a cattle, they don't age very well because the fat content is different than American steers, especially the Angus and the Hereford, where you have enough of the calpain and calpastanes within the muscle tissue to have a good aging result. So if you are watching this video from South America, the cattle that you find there is not so suitable for aging because the weather is very hot there. The American type of cows, like the Angus and the Herefords, they don't do really well in hot weather. So in South America, most of the cattle have a hump on the back of the neck. It's called a kind of a Brahman or kind of Zebu breed of cattle. More information that you want to know, but that's why you come to my channel, learn cool stuff like that. So this is about ready to go. I'm gonna go ahead and now start to smother it in butter. The butter needs to be softened, and this softens around between 68 to 70 degrees. So my room now is in this perfect temperature range, so the butter is easy to work with. I'm just gonna smother it, kind of like spreading peanut butter on my brisket. And what you can do is you can get a thin coat off first, chill the brisket, and then get another coat on right after. I have about 2 pounds of butter here. That's enough to smother a 12 to 14 pound brisket. It's been in the refrigerator for about half an hour, and I'm gonna continue the process now by adding more butter to kind of like cover all of some of the spots here. All right, doesn't look too bad. Smother it with butter. We finished trimming the brisket, and you want to trim away all of the oxidized portions after you age. So you want to get down to kind of where the red meat is and trim off any kind of dark spots. And looks like it's ready to go. We're going to season it and cook it up. Compare it against a brisket cooked the conventional way. I'm trimming the control sample now of the brisket. We're gonna cook this brisket up the conventional way, and then I'm gonna compare it against the one that's aged for 30 days so that I can kind of taste them side by side. Share with you guys my impressions of the appearance, the taste, texture, tenderness, aroma, and the overall impression, so we can determine whether the 30-day butter-aged brisket is better or worse than a traditionally conventionally cooked brisket here. All I'm doing is I'm trimming away some of the fascia, which is the silver skin, so that when I put the rub on, the rub will be able to adhere to the protein directly. So just a light trim on this. I don't want to lose too much yield. This is not a competition trim. This is just a backyard trim or catering trim, and I want just to get some of the fat off. I like to trim off the fat when I'm doing even a backyard or restaurant or catering trim, because I like the burn ends on the back part here. So I like to take all of the fat off the point muscle, or they call it the fatty in Texas. This way I'm going to get a beautiful bark on the back, and we're going to be able to generate some beautiful burn ends to taste these morsels of beef heaven. And just trim away all the excess fat here. You don't have to get too deep, just get deep enough to get some of the fat cap off. You'll be absolutely wonderful. And if you have a big blob of fat like here, this is kind of like thick here, you can see, right? It's maybe an inch thick. You actually shave off just a tad of it, leave about a 1/4 inch or 1/2 inch of fat cap, because this fat will render into the pit. Somebody's got to go clean all that fat out from the smoker. Over, and this looks good enough here. And for this brisket fat here, this is really good to save if you are gonna be making beef sausages, and you can grind also into hamburger. So if the brisket is kind of nice and soft, I like to save it. I'm gonna put it in a bowl here. Future episode, I'm gonna show you guys how we make homemade sausages. We trim our brisket, and this is the 35-40 day aged one, and this is my control brisket. We're gonna season it exactly the same. I'm gonna use 4 seasonings today. I'm gonna use my First Place USA KCBS brisket rub. Beef rub. It's got stuff like Worcestershire powder, shiitake mushroom, a whole bunch of other stuff. You see my other videos to show you guys how I engineer flavors into my seasoning. But for today, I'm gonna skip all that work, just use the bottle. It's a lot easier. A lot of times I don't even have time to do all those things I show you in the video. That's why I put it in the bottle. It's very, very convenient. So if you wanna use my rub at home, great. If you wanna use another rub, that's fine too. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna augment with a couple of things I like. I like a little bit of a higher dose of pepper on my briskets. That's because I'm from Texas. I went to Texas Tech. That was when I first had my first seminal bite of Texas style brisket. I fell in love with Texas style brisket over 40 years ago. I'm gonna add a little bit of umami. I'm gonna use a Maggi seasoning here, and I also like a little bit touch of a celery seed for 2 reasons. It gives great flavor. It also adds a special note to the brisket that makes it extra special. And also the celery has naturally occurring nitrites that will give you a better smoke ring. So these are all the black belt tips that I taught you in my competition videos, but nothing to say that you can't use these black belt tricks onto a home brisket, a restaurant brisket, or a catering brisket to up your brisket game. The first thing I'm gonna do is gonna get a little bit of liquid on it from the Maggi seasoning. This is a little smear like this. A little bit goes a long way, so don't overdo it. I'm guessing maybe, I don't know, 1/2 teaspoon or 1 teaspoon of the brisket. Give the brisket a nice massage. This will give it a nice umami flavor on the surface of the meat. So, and it's a little bit salty, so just be mindful about that. And that's a very kind of a nice sensation cooking with your hands. Like I always told you guys, right, when I cook, it's always about spreading love, and how you need to always be calm, have love in your heart, and not be in a state of anxiousness or angry when you cook, because these hands and your body transmit energy, and once you touch the meat, that energy is transferred. So if you're angry and you cook food, the food is going to be angry, because you always heard me say, you know, mama's cooking is always better. Not necessarily because mama's a better cook, but because mama cooks with love, and that energy transfer of love is what makes barbecue special. You've seen my recipes in my videos. I have 160 now, pushing towards 200 videos. And you notice whenever I cook deliberately with love and care to give respect for the animal who gave their life for your eating pleasure. And Mama's cooking is always better because Mama cooks with love, because the love comes from the heart, and that energy of your being transfers into everything you touch, including everything you cook. So always cook with love, because that's how Mama is able to cook really great food. And even though Mama may not be the best cook in the world, but when she cooks food, it's always great. Now I'm going to put a little bit on the back side here, because for you people who keep sending me those hate mails, why don't I season the brisket fat cap? You can if you want to. There's another 3-hour debate and fight as to whether you season the fat cap. Some people believe that when you season the fat cap, the drippings from the fat, which are seasoned with the seasonings, will fall into the jus, so the jus is more flavorful. I'll tell you something, a little secret. I won first place USA brisket without seasoning the fat cap. Remember, I cooked in my heyday something like 35 contests a year. That means I'm on the road every week. I leave my driveway at 6 a.m. on a Wednesday morning. I get to Kansas City Thursday night, 10 p.m. Cook Friday, Saturday, get into my vehicle. On Sunday, head home back to LA, get back to my driveway, 10 p.m. on Monday night, go to work on Tuesday. So that kind of grueling schedule is that I really have to be smart and efficient about the way I cook food, because if I use a lot of seasonings and product, then I have to refill everything for the next cook the following week. So I kind of optimize my routine to know what is needed to get maximum results. But for home cooking, you can kind of indulge yourself and do whatever you want. I purposely left the fat cap on the point muscle so that I'll know. On my control brisket, like this one here, I'm going to basically remove the fat of the fat cap for maximum burn ends. That way I can tell the difference between the two when I'm done. So after I apply the Maggi, the next thing that goes on is basically some celery seed, just a light coating of celery seed on the meat side only, not on the fat side, like so. Now a lot of you have told me that you tried celery seed and it didn't work for you. That's because you're using the wrong celery seed. This is ground up fine celery seed. Some of you are saying that how come the celery seed creates big granules? Because you were not paying attention to my videos. When I say ground celery seed, I did not mean celery seed. If you try to use celery seed, it's going to be way, way too coarse. All right, now I'm going to apply the rub now. It's my Slap Your Daddy, a beef rub. Okay. You don't have to use my rub, just use any rub you want. If you don't have any rub, just salt and pepper. At this point, it's fine. All right, like I mentioned to you, you'll notice how evenly I sprinkle the rub, right, about maybe 8-10 inches away. And I like to pat my rub down. Some people like to rub a rub. I never rub a rub, because when you rub a rub, it creates inconsistency in the application. And we always say in competition barbecue, win or lose is one too many shakes of the rub or one missing shake of the rub. So when I apply the rub nice and even, I really want to maintain the same amount of consistency in the meat. I cook my backyard and home briskets the same way I cook competition, with a lot of care, a lot of consistency in the technique and the application of products and application of injections and so on. Okay, so here's the one done. We'll do the one on control sample here. Just an extra touch of black pepper. You can use any one you like. I think the Kirkland one is pretty good from Costco. And just a nice light coating, so extra pepper. This is optional. If you don't like pepper, don't put it. I like lots of pepper on my brisket. Kind of peppery style, Texas style brisket. So here's control. People always ask me, Harry, how long do you leave the rub on? Ideally, I like about something like 4 hours. A lot of times 1 hour is enough. Also, if you don't have time, go ahead and just put it on the pit.
So out of all three of these seasonings, which one should you do first, and does that matter?
The trick is essentially the first layer is always the seasoning that you are using to impart maximum flavor. I like to put my Slap Your Daddy rub as the first layer because I can see the rub as it's being applied, so that I know that the consistency, the application is absolutely perfect. Remember that the other things like the black pepper and then the celery seed are only supporting players. So it's kind of like Beyonce and Destiny's Child. Beyonce kind of is the main diva. The other Destiny's Child is kind of like the supporting player. So Beyonce is the rub, which is the Slap Your Daddy rub, and then kind of Destiny's Child is the celery seed and the black pepper. So if you ever get asked, why did you put which layer first and why, you have my answer. I'm ready to put the butter aged brisket in. And I left 2 toothpicks here. The control sample here, which is a regular conventional brisket, has no toothpicks. Put it right here. Just the butter aged brisket together with the control brisket beside it. I like to spray water to help set the crust, and you want to do this probably initially every hour and towards the end before it crusts every 30 minutes. I'm just spraying with plain water because water was good enough for first place KCBS Registered Reserve brisket in America. So you can use any other product you want, but I just use water. It's been about 5.5 hours, and at 275, I have absolutely a gorgeous crust on the GMG here. I'm going to check the temperature. The crust is set. We're about 170-ish, 160-ish on this one. So it's all good. We're ready to wrap. Let's wrap 35-day butter aged brisket. I'm going to use a little bit of a mop here. So maybe about 5-6 ounces of mop to get it a little bit wet so that we can soften the crust. If your crust falls off at this point in time, then you know what mistake you made. You basically not allowed the crust to set, so the crust is going to fall off. The butter aged brisket is cooked. I have my control brisket here. We're gonna slice up the control brisket, which is cooked the conventional way, and compare it against the butter aged brisket for about 30-35 days. On the right, we have the butter aged brisket, about 35 days. On the left, I have my control sample. So let me just give you some comments. In terms of appearance, about the same. This one, both have a beautiful smoke ring. I cut up some of the burn ends here, so burn ends look pretty good. Same here. So appearance-wise, it's a tie. I'm gonna taste the conventional one first. A little pull. Okay, perfectly tender. Good overall biscuit. No complaints here. I'm gonna take a bite now from the point. Burn ends right here. Nice fatty piece. Here's a burn end. Take a bite. Wow, burn end was really good. It's kind of a little, just a touch smoky. Has that beefy flavor. Very soft, very tender. You can see how much the juices are. Very moist point. So just a very good Texas style flat and a point, or fatty and lean. So let's move over now to the 30-day butter aged. Drape wise, about the same amount of tenderness. Let's check for tenderness. Good pull test here, pretty tender. Let's give it a taste test now. Okay, eat the flat, which is the lean first. Taste the point, muscle. I've eaten my way through 2 rounds of tasting of the conventional brisket here versus the one aged for 35 days, smothered in butter. Here's my overall impression. So first, both briskets are absolutely fantastic eating. The point and the flat, the fatty and the lean muscles are absolutely perfect. So beautiful smoke ring. So in terms of the appearance, it's a tie. In terms of taste, they both taste good. One that's been soaked in butter for 30 days has no residual butter taste. But in terms of tenderness, I would give the 30-day just a slight nod on the tenderness. So both are very tender. You know, the mouthfeel is great, but on the butter one, it just feels a tad more tender. So if this was a perfect 9, in terms of tenderness, this would be 8, maybe 8.5. So I really like the butter aged one, but again, you know, 30 days sitting in the fridge and then losing all their yield by having to trim off the oxidized parts. I honestly don't think it's really worth it to kind of age a brisket for 35 days. You can still get a very good result with just a regular brisket. If you don't eat it side by side, I don't think I can tell the difference. But eating side by side, this has a slight age. So there you have it, kind of a very close first and second. It's tie in appearance, tie in taste, but just a slight nod to tenderness onto the one with the butter aging. I hope you enjoyed this little experiment I did for myself, for my own education. So remember, Harry failed so you don't have to, and you don't have to go through the trouble to do all these different tests. I've given you guys the results. Please like, subscribe, and share. And I want to thank also my Patreon subscribers who will be helping me fund all these video projects. So until the next video, we will see ya. 30-day butter aged. It's finger licking good, right, Beans?